Doug Hucker, and the topic will be Success in the Colored Gemstone Revolution, Passion and a Plan. Without any further ado, Doug, please take it away.
Well, geez, normally I give a longer presentation. That's okay. That's good. That's good. Thank you, Brian, very much. And thank the American Gem Society for allowing me to do this. I will let you guys know right now. Some of you have probably seen me make presentations before, but this is absolutely my first webinar presentation. So if I mess things up from a technical standpoint, please stay with me. Okay, we're going to start out talking about colored gemstones. Obviously, color is something that is incredibly timely today. You're seeing it in all of the magazines that are advertising colored gemstones. You're seeing it, in consumer electronics. You're seeing it in fashion. You're seeing it around the entire marketplace for consumer goods. What we want to do is try to give you some ideas and some tips to help you take advantage of this. I fully realize that some of you on this webinar may be very involved in colored gemstones right now, and I appreciate that. Bear with us if we're not teaching brand new and exciting things. And for those of you who are not, one of the things that we do as the American Gem Trade Association is we want to provide opportunities and tools and things for you to build and improve your colored gemstone business, because there's profitability in colored gemstones that many of us are going to need to survive. But having said that, you may be very involved in color, but the question is, you also have employees, and those employees may not be as versed in color as you are, and certainly the clients, as they come in the door, may or may not be versed in color. And what most clients are looking for today, and they are looking for color. We know that. Color is something that attracts them into the store, and it's something that our research has said they want to see more of. But whereas many people are very familiar with, or at least they have a rudimentary understanding of the 4 C's of diamonds, and they understand 14 karat versus 18 karat gold, colored gemstones can be a bit of a mystery, especially when you get outside of the classic gemstones, ruby, emerald, sapphire, and get into that great big world of what we call traditional gemstones. So we're going to talk about gemstones today as well, but I want to point out that we're going to address more than just colored gemstones. Knowledge is good. It's a great quote from Animal House. If you've not seen it, I recommend it. It was filmed on University of Oregon campus where I went to school. But it is true. Knowledge is good. You have to have knowledge about colored gemstones, but to be real successful with colored gemstones in your store, you need to be prepared for your clients, for their color needs, for their color interests, and you very definitely, it is helpful if you're aware of what is happening with the world around you in terms of color. And as I said before, we're talking about color is very prominent in many industries. For the sake of brevity, I'm going to talk about the fashion industry here, because fashion is oftentimes something that drives our business. To begin with, color is more than just color. Color is not showing up randomly. It's not showing up accidentally. It is not emerging in a serendipitous manner. Color is something that is very predicated and very planned in all industries, and certainly in the fashion industry. Whether you're talking about furniture, cars, consumer electronics, whatever, there is an organization you should be familiar with, and if you want to write this down, the URL here is colorassociation.com. Okay, and the colorassociation.com is an organization whose mission is to issue color forecasts in the form of cards twice a year. They give directions in color trends to the market, enable different segments of the market to coordinate their products by offering the formulas for the production of each forecast color, buy products worldwide knowing they would coordinate with the point of sale, and serve as an information center for all kinds of color information. Now, what that essentially means, folks, is that color, one moment, I'm going to pop up something for you to take a look at here. Oh, wrong one. Sorry. We're going to go back. Okay. The Color Council was started back in the 1915 for the textile industry. And basically what they did was they tried to coordinate colors and define colors. And it has grown into an organization that predicts and standardizes and reaches agreement about color trends so that they can forecast. And what this does in a practical standpoint is this. Each year, in fact, several times a year, color czars get together from different industries and they forecast color. They say, what are the colors that are going to be hot, 18 months from now, 2 years from now? What are the colors that we're going to see made into textiles? What are we going to see made into furniture? So that when people produce materials, all right, they're not just producing random colors. Your clothing may fit with your automobile. Your handbags are going to fit with your shoes. And it is a coordinated effort. So if you go to colораssociation.com, you can see forecasts of color. Now, I will tell you that this is an excellent website, but it costs you about $250 a year to access it. It is an incredible website so that you can take a look and see what kinds of color palettes are going to be used 18 months to 24 months out. That can be very, very helpful in helping you forecast your color gemstone purchases, what kinds of gemstones are going to fit with and coordinate with and work well with the color trends in fashion and industry. The Color Association does cost $250 a year, but if you don't want to spend the $250 a year, I recommend you go to this website, which is called Fashion Trendsetter. I won't walk you all the way through the navigation on this, but if you click on color trends from that bar up there, it'll take you down eventually to ISPO text trends, color trends. And you see it says color trends for fall and winter 2020 and 21. And what you begin to see is there are swatches of color. Many of you are probably familiar with the Pantone and Pantone colors. And most of these fashion websites that are forecasting colors talk about Pantone color designations, and that's for purpose of uniformity. What you're seeing here is a core color palette for 2020-21, beginning in fall and winter of 2020. That is about 18 months out, and that's how far they forecast out. So it gives industries and it gives you time to start doing your merchandising. As you get down into deeper and deeper into the color trends, you'll see there are more and more palettes that are presented. For each of the 4 seasons, they will use different palettes. And it's something that you have, if you go in and you take a look, you're going to appreciate how they're planning to coordinate all of these colors so that they can merchandise things effectively together and they're not producing colors that are fighting with each other. Now, for our purposes, what we need to do is take a look at those colors. We need to say, okay, Pantone says black. It's the one color that they typically don't use some kind of romantic designation for. And as many of you may know, black is the absence of color completely. It's the absence of light. The rest of the core palette has mint leaf. That looks to me like that little teal tourmaline that you see here. Pantone Xenia, we might say orange, but they say Xenia, citrine. The cayenne color looks very much like a nice, slightly rhodolite colored garnet. And aquamarine, you can see what I've done is I've just gone through and kind of matched up colors with the different palettes. The lower row on the, not all the way to the right, may look black to you, but it actually is a very deep blue, depending upon the ability of your screen. So the gist of what I'm saying here is that when it comes to understanding color, there are really a couple of considerations. One, you're going to be working with what we call the classic gemstones, ruby, emerald, sapphire. And you'll also be working with what we call the traditional gemstones, which is kind of everything else. And they're approached very, very differently. But especially when you're working with the traditional gemstones like garnets, aquamarines, peridots, tourmalines, and things like this. The appeal is really the richness and the interest of the color. And having an understanding of what kind of fashions are going to be showing up, or what kind of colors will be showing up in fashions in the accessories and things, can be very helpful for you to make a presentation to your customer and make sure that you've merchandised with the right material. So we'll get back to that in a bit, talking about the colors that are coming, but it helps to know what colors are on the horizon so that you can make sure that you've got colors that are going to work with those colors that are coming into fashion. So knowledge is good. The second thing I want to talk to you about is gemstones themselves. From a rudimentary standpoint, we know that these materials are natural materials that are formed in the ground as crystals, and they come out of the ground, and they look like some of the materials that you see here. You've got a beautiful peridot, okay, some golden beryl, an emerald crystal, ruby, quartz crystal, and thing. And that's not a quartz crystal, it's a topaz crystal, okay? So they come out of the ground as crystals, and those were the crystals that early man dug up and didn't really understand. So they attributed a lot of romantic and intriguing stories about, for instance, this ruby crystal here. If early man had seen that ruby crystal, he might say, that reminds me of fire, or it reminds me of blood. So very passionate stories and legends were built around rubies. Green gemstones, a little more soothing, might have reminded them about springtime or something. But they didn't really understand the science of these gemstones the way we understand it now. But eventually, you're going to find out as well that oftentimes it's the romance and the lore and the intrigue that still kind of stays with a customer, and the scientific aspect is not something that really drives them so much. It helps that you know, it helps that you can explain at least some of the basics to a customer. But when it comes down to explaining colored gemstones, it's really about the appeal of the color, finding out what works with the customer, and then being able to give them enough information about the specifics of the gemstone so that they feel comfortable in making a purchase. Somewhere along the line, man learned how to drill these gemstones, these crystals that came out of the ground. They learned faceting techniques, and over the years, faceting techniques have improved considerably. So now when we think of many gemstones, we perceive, or we envision, that perfectly clean, beautiful, rich, faceted gemstone in a variety of shapes: ovals, cushion cuts, square cuts, emerald cuts. Sometimes the customer comes into the store and they're looking at gemstones, and one of the questions they have is, I'd love that great big round gemstone like it was in my grandmother's ring, but I'm a real ruby fan, and it's about a 10 millimeter round stone. And you have to be able to work with that customer and make them understand that 10 millimeter round rubies are not very something you're not going to encounter very often. Typically, the shape of the gemstone is often predicated by the shape of the rough. So when you see tourmalines, oftentimes you see tourmalines cut into long emerald cuts. You see emeralds cut into long emerald cuts, and that's typically because the crystals themselves are elongated and it gives good weight yield. Sapphires and rubies often come in tumbled pebbles, and if they're crystalline faces, they're hexagonal, and they lend themselves better to cushion cuts and ovals as far as weight retention is concerned. So the shape is something that you need to be aware of what the customer's tastes are, but you also need to be aware of the fact that when a customer has particular preferences, they may or may not translate well into the particular gemstone they're interested in, because the gemstones aren't typically cut into those shapes. Okay? We'll talk more about that in just a bit, but I wanted to talk to you about developing a little more education for your staff and for yourself. The American Gem Society prides itself on education and professionalism, and education certainly is available in the AGS Way courses. GIA produces wonderful courses, the Diamond Council of America, and many professional courses out there that are fee-based can provide very good information for your staff to train themselves. I would recommend it's probably a little easier to get started, especially with entry-level employees, with something simple and basic. And what we've tried to do is provide for you on our website, agta.org, an area for gemstones where you can send your people and it can give them the basic knowledge and information they need to work with the customer. Just to give you an idea, we're going to go there right now. And this is our landing page for our website. If you go to agta.org, we have a nice video talking about colored gemstones and some of the appeal. There's a visitor site and a member site. If you are a member, you'd click into member and you'd load in your information. That member site allows you to do many of the things you might do as a member as far as bookkeeping, ordering pieces, keeping track of your information and things. But if you're not a member, you simply click on the visitor side and it will take you into our website. We've got trade shows, education, directory, spectrum, resources, media. I'm going to focus on education right now. So if you see this education bar, you can click here and you can go to gemstones. Now what we've done is we put together a reasonably comprehensive list of all the different gemstones. So let's say you're approaching a particular month. Let's say it's February and you want to, or it's coming up on February, or you want to let's say look at aquamarine. You simply scroll up and down this list, and as you hover over the gemstone, it will give you an idea, a picture on the right, what you're looking at. But let's just go to aquamarine and click on aquamarine. In this portion of the website, it just takes you through a very simple story and presentation about aquamarine. It starts out with romance, history and lore, legends about aquamarine, being associated with the ocean and things like this. Okay, some of my pictures don't look like. Okay, it talks about origins, where aquamarine comes from, and you'll see that it has a global map, and it has the areas that are prolific producers of aquamarine focused in green. One of the things that we often say about most of the traditional gemstones, if you're not quite sure where it comes from, say Brazil, because it's a pretty safe bet that Brazil produces many of those gemstones. It talks about the sources. It talks about how those gemstones may be enhanced, which is an important presentation for your customers. Okay. For an example, pure blue aquamarine is most prized, and as such, heat treatment is often applied to enhance the aquamarine's color. After applying gentle heat for several hours, the once greenish gemstone will become pure pastel blue. The result is permanent and widely accepted in the jewelry industry. Many times your customers may not ask about enhancements to gemstones, but it could be a lingering question in your customers' minds. And so what we recommend, and the FTC in many cases requires, that gemstone enhancements are disclosed to the customer. It is very easy to introduce that into the conversation if you talk about how to take care of your gemstone. But if it's not introduced and the customers are concerned about it, it may be an impediment to making that sale. We also talk about how to select a gemstone, what kinds of characteristics you look for in particular gemstones, and they are specific to each of the gemstones that you have featured here. We show some different shapes and sizes and looks. We talk about care. We give some technical information about the gemstones. And then down at the very bottom, as you scroll down, you'll see our members who are AGTA members that carry aquamarine. And you can just scroll down through this list and you can pick suppliers in your area geographically, whatever. If you find a supplier you'd like to take a look at their website, you can simply click on it, and it will take you to that person's website and talk about all of the different gem materials that they carry, not just aquamarine, but alex, amethyst, ametrine. And if you want to visit that person's website, they typically have their website listed on here. Unfortunately, David does not have his website listed, but in cases where the supplier did have a website, it would be listed right under their contact information. You can just click on that and it would take you directly to the NASI website. So beyond just being an educational website where you can take your employees and give them a fundamental or simple, accessible education about the gemstones. It also allows you to very quickly search out vendors that may supply the materials you're looking for. Now, the thing about educating your employees on gemstones is I don't recommend that you give them this URL for our website and say, go learn about gemstones. When you are working to educate your people, if you have weekend training meetings or if you have downtime where there's not customers in the store and you want to gather the people together, or I always recommend that any educational material similar to what we have on the website there, anytime you present that material, focus on the materials that you have in your showcases. Aquamarine is a beautiful gemstone. We have lovely pictures of aquamarine, but it's not quite the same as picking that aqua up out of the showcase and taking a look at it, and then just talking about the gemstone. I've done a lot of training in jewelry stores, working with lots of employees, and what I found is there's some universal considerations. One, everybody hates to role play. We don't do that. Okay, but what I do like to do is I like to just get some pieces out of the showcase and start talking about them. It'd be surprising if you allow your people to do this and take that piece out. Oftentimes you make a presentation, you take a piece of amethyst or an aqua out of the showcase, and you ask one of your employees, well, tell me about that. Okay, and you'll find that there's a hesitation and there's a nervousness there to say, what am I going to say? It's an aqua, it's a blue gemstone. And if you have a number of people and you have a little basic primer, say, for instance, like the information that we have on our website, you can have that up and you can just talk and just have a discussion. Excite me about this piece. Tell me a little bit about the color. What kinds of clothing would this fit with? Why would a woman be attracted to this thing? And it becomes more of a discussion about the gemstone, and you can focus on characteristics and information about the gemstone that really relates more to why a customer would want to have it. It's easy for you to begin talking about quality, especially if you have one or two amethysts in your showcase, and you can say, let's talk about quality. This one with very, very rich colors is very appealing. What about this one? A little lighter color. You begin to talk about things like the intensity of color is involved in rarity, and we'll discuss this more as we get into the webinar. But just having a general discussion about why you discuss these things with a customer and what kinds of characteristics would be interesting to them can be very important. I do recommend our website because it's got very good basic information on it. I don't recommend just kind of perusing the internet unless you spend a little bit of time kind of vetting what you're looking at, because there's a lot of good information on the internet, but there's also a lot of bad information on the internet. And when a customer comes into your store, they want to know that your sales associates are educated, that they know what they're talking about, and they're looking for you to give them the right kind of guidance and right kind of information. The more attractive and simple you can make that, the better off you're going to be. I always recommend that for every gemstone you have in your case, your salespeople should have a 10 or 15 second something that they say about that gemstone. That description of the gemstone, it's a beautiful natural gemstone. Okay, it comes from Brazil. Aquamarine has always been treasured. It was treasured by the ancients, and by its name, it was associated with water. It doesn't take long to have a little bit of information about every single gemstone that just puts the customer at ease. Once you get more into working with a customer and working with gemstones, it's important for your employees to understand that they don't have to know everything about every gemstone. What they do need to know is what the typical attributes of gemstones are, the richness of the color, the quality of the cut, and all of those characteristics really go across the board with the different gemstones. And so once you understand the basic characteristics of a fine gemstone, you'll find out that it doesn't matter whether you're showing a garnet or an aquamarine or a tsavorite. Most of the characteristics that you're looking for in an exquisite stone are similar. The issues that you have to deal with then has to do with rarity. How rare is this beautiful, rich color in this gemstone? How unusual is this color? And you'll also have to deal with the fact that sometimes the richest, finest example of aqua in your store is not necessarily one that appeals to the customer, whether it may be they just like a more pastel color or it's not within their budget. So when you're presenting quality, and again, we'll talk about this in a bit, you want to make certain that you allow the customer to understand how quality presents itself in a gemstone, but also understand that that quality is typically associated with rarity. The higher the quality, the rarer the gemstone, and the rarer the gemstone, the higher the price. But you need to be able to do that without painting yourself into a corner and make certain that the customer understands quality considerations but doesn't feel disappointed because they have to buy the material that is not the finest in the showcase. Another educational tool I would recommend, if many of you have come to the AGTA GemFair in Tucson, you know we have a very nice seminar series. We probably do 20 to 25 to 30 seminars every year. They're all engaged in one way or another or focused on color. It may be a discussion of regulatory issues. It may be a nice, slide presentation of somebody traveling through the jungles and climbing down in mines. It may be a marketing seminar that talks to you about specifics in marketing, about how you market colored gemstones. We have a number of different seminars every year, and those seminars are available to you in this flash drive. If you're an AGTA member, we send these to you for free. If you're not a member, they're modestly priced. You just want to go to the website and you can click on resources and you can look at these things. But the flash drive itself has about 25 hours of training on it. It's nicely done because many of the seminars can be listened to, and you get a lot of information from the audio, and you can listen to it while you're setting up showcases and things like that. You don't necessarily have to look at the slide presentations. So I'd recommend that if you're looking for training materials for your people, start out slow and start out, basic. People want to get to know gemstones. They don't want to feel threatened by the fact that there's very complex information and complex knowledge. Many of the gemstones in your cases are old friends. They'll recognize the names. They just have to get a little bit more information so that they can explain to the customer. And sometimes those explanations don't have anything to do with legend and lore. They just have to do with the fact that how does a customer know that this is a quality amethyst? And we'll talk about those considerations of quality as we move on. So, when you're presenting a gemstone, making a presentation to a customer and dealing with the customer's issues, you really have two categories of gemstones. One we call the classic gemstones, which are ruby, emerald, and sapphires. Those, for many years, were referred to as the precious gemstones. And the only unfortunate aspect of referring to them as the precious gemstones is that the rest of them became semi-precious. So we talk about classics and the traditional gemstones. With the classic gemstones, ruby, emerald, and sapphires, they are materials that are rarer and they can become exceedingly rare in large sizes. In the hierarchy of prices, you have ruby is the most expensive, sapphire is next, and then emerald. The reason there, again, with all gemstones, the price is often predicated on the rarity of the gemstone. Certainly the reputation is important. I'll tell you right now that sapphire is always the best-selling of the classic gemstones. Blue is always the best-selling color. Every single year for the past million years I've been doing this, I'll be contacted by, consumer writers and everything else. And what's the big color this year? We'll say blue, because it's always blue. But getting back to the hierarchy of prices and the gemstones, ruby is exceedingly rare, especially in larger sizes. And all three of these gemstones follow a exponential curve in terms of price as the size increases. It's not that a 2-carat ruby is just like diamond. It's not a 2-carat diamond is a lot more than twice as expensive as a 1-carat diamond. And that is not necessarily untrue when you're working with amethyst or aqua, but it is certainly true when you're working with these classic gemstones. So these gemstones increase in value considerably as the size goes up. The thing you should be aware of is that if you consider rubies, to find a 2-3-carat ruby the difficulty becomes greater and greater as you increase in size. Sapphire regularly occurs in larger sizes than rubies. So to find a 1 to 5-carat sapphire is not that difficult. Certainly, the price increases, but sapphires do occur regularly in larger sizes than rubies do. So you have an opportunity to get a bigger look. It's still going to be a more expensive gemstone, but a customer looking for a 10-carat ruby, would it be very difficult to satisfy that customer? Looking for a 10-carat sapphire, not so hard. Okay, and then emerald is even more regularly found in larger sizes. So while these different materials appeal to different people depending upon their color and their understanding of the traditions, maybe it's their birthstone, you should be aware of the fact that in working with these gemstones, this emerald is going to occur much more regularly in larger sizes. Sapphire as well, not as much as emerald, and ruby is the least available in larger sizes. And the exponential increase in price shows up more in ruby than it does in sapphire and emerald. The other thing that you should be aware of in these gemstones is that when you're working with a presentation with a customer, because of the value involved, your presentation is going to have to be more focused on rarity than it might be with some of your other gemstones. When you're showing a 2-carat, 3-carat ruby and you're talking $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a carat, the customer's probably going to require a little bit more explanation, a little bit more understanding. With ruby, emerald, and sapphire, it's not unusual that these gemstones will be accompanied by a laboratory report. If that laboratory report is from a good laboratory, a respectable laboratory, can be very helpful in the sales presentation. But a laboratory report is not going to give you much in the way of the information you need to provide to the customer. If you have a customer that's looking at one of these 3 stones, you approach it the same way you do a diamond. It arguably, especially in the American Gem Society, some people may say, what's the most important C of a diamond? Some people may say cut. Some people may say clarity. Some people may say size. But when you're working with colored gemstones, there are 2 considerations, really, color and cut, that probably are more important than any other. Certainly, clarity and size is important. As we said, size increases the rarity dramatically. But when you're talking about the appeal of a particular gemstone, size being, equal, the color and the quality of cut is something that a customer will see even without necessarily understanding how slight purplish tinge can affect the price of a ruby or a slightly orangish tinge can affect the price of a ruby. But a pure red is what you want to see in a ruby. A pure blue in a sapphire. If you have modifying colors, it's going to lower the price somewhat. Anywhere across the gemstone kingdom, I will say that the quality of cut is something that impacts the appearance and the pizzazz of the stone, and it is probably something that is less easily recognized by a customer than anything else. If you take a look at a customer and showed them 3 rubies in a showcase, 3 emeralds in a showcase, 3 sapphires in a showcase, and there was a measurable distinction between the quality, chances are they're going to be able to see it. And they're probably going to be able to tell you which is the finest piece, because that's the richness of the color. When it comes to other characteristics, for instance, clarity characteristics, if they are not damaged characteristics, are oftentimes difficult to see in ruby and sapphire, so they don't impact the price as significantly, because the inclusions are typically the same refractive index as the host material. That's not too techy for you, but it means inclusions are hard to see in ruby and sapphire. Not so much in emerald, but traditionally we have appreciated the fact that emeralds oftentimes show you inclusions that we call them jardin. We call them the gardens in the stone. Now, there's a lot more sophistication in being able to present these three gemstones, but what you do need to do and think about is if you are working with a customer in an expensive stone like this, follow the 4 C's in which order you want to follow, but if you discuss each of those characteristics, you have covered the important characteristics of the gemstone that need to be presented to the customer. And if they have more questions about, well, tell me about the size. You know, I like this ruby. It's gorgeous, but I'd really like something a little bit bigger. Then you can step back to carat weight, and you can talk about the rarity factor and how it increases the price exponentially. You can talk about the emerald, how it regularly occurs in larger sizes. And if you want a larger size, but if they're saying, well, I'd like this big stone with a round, then you have to start talking about the cut. And you can step back to the cut and say, remember, we talked about the quality of cutting. Another consideration you should understand is that the crystal, as it comes out of the ground, typically dictates what shape they're going to cut. And it's very unusual that you'll see large round cut emeralds. They're typically emerald cut or cushion cut, and you can explain to them why. Again, different gemstones from different areas don't necessarily hold consistent with a pattern. For instance, you may see more oval emeralds cut from Zambia than you would from Colombia, and that has to do with the material that is coming out of the ground. So, in addressing the fact that these are the classic gemstones, a little bit more focus on the 4 C's, a little bit more of a complex presentation can be helpful to you. Other gemstones regularly occur in large sizes. You know, your aquas, your amethyst, your citrines, your topaz and things typically occur in larger sizes, and it is provides an opportunity for you to give your customer a much larger look than you might be in a ruby, emerald, sapphire. Keep in mind that that's not necessarily the case when you're working with some of the classic gemstones, for instance, Tsavorite garnet. It does occur in exquisite material and large sizes, but it's not necessarily inexpensive. When you go from a 5 carat to an 8 carat amethyst, the difference in price really is based upon the weight of the gemstone. It's not on the rarity. When you go from a 5 or a 4 or a 3 carat Tsavorite to a 5 carat Tsavorite, the rarity comes back into play. So it helps to understand, if you're looking at these traditional gemstones, that larger sizes can be much more affordable and much more available, but that's not uniform across all the different gemstones. As a general rule, when you have gemstone species like quartz that has amethyst, citrine, pink quartz, rose quartz, when you have tourmaline that has all of the different colors, when you have garnets that have greens and blues and reds and oranges, those are allochromatic species. It means they occur in a number of different colors, whereas an idiochromatic gemstone, peridot, only comes green. When you have an allochromatic series, garnets, tourmalines, and things like that, typically the most expensive varieties are going to be the reds, the greens, and the blues, especially if they are intense color. The less expensive are going to be the earth tones, the oranges, the browns, the yellows. It's a general rule that you can consider when you're working with tourmaline or with allochromatic gemstones, garnets and tourmalines and things, but it's not hard and fast. Ugly green is still ugly green. So if it's going to be an expensive gemstone, it's going to have to be a richer green color to command that price. It helps if your people are familiar with the options when they're working with a gemstone. For instance, maybe someone loves ruby and they're looking for a ruby, or a ruby appeals to them, but it's not necessarily really ruby that appeals. Maybe it's just red that appeals. It's very helpful if your staff are aware of the options. Here's a good example. You've got a beautiful ruby that's $3,500 to $10,000 per carat in a 3 to 4 carat size, and it could certainly exceed that depending upon the material. Spinel, $600 to $2,000. Not too many 3 to 4 carat red spinels you're going to find today in the market at $600 per carat, because the price is increasing in those materials. It's kind of the the darling gemstone in the past 5 years. And again, you've got tourmaline, red tourmalines at 150, 250, 350 a carat. These are wholesale costs. But I'm not so concerned about the exactitude of the price per carat. It's the relationship between the different gemstones. Being familiar with options for blue sapphire, less expensive being tanzanite, much less expensive being an iolite. When a customer is looking for color, or you're building color combinations and things, and you're trying to work with different price points, it helps to understand this. Keeping a handle on prices, I recommend the Gem Guide or the Gem World Guide from Richard Drucker. If any of you have questions about how to find that guide, just give me a call or email me at the office. But understanding these options gives you an opportunity to work with your customer, because the rubies, the emeralds, and the sapphires, everyone knows them and everyone wants them, but it's not necessarily emerald that appeals to them. It may just be the color. And if you can provide a clear understanding of the different options in that color and different price ranges, it will help you increase your sale. Okay, so that's a little bit about the traditional gemstones. You know, you want to think about particular colors and all the different pinks and lavenders and things that you can come up with. Here we've got rhodolite garnet, we've got kunzites, we've got, we have morganites, we've got amethyst, we've got a pink sapphire. All of these are those pinkish materials. You have different options in the green materials, and oftentimes there's just an enormous range of prices involved as well. Good example here. You've got zircons, $200-300 a carat, nice fine sizes, blue color. Aquas that can go, several $100s per carat to thousands of dollars per carat. And then you've got the Paraiba tourmaline in the upper left. That's, good Lord knows, I hate to speculate. I've seen those Paraibas going for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 per carat in larger sizes. So the classic gemstones, pure color, ruby, emerald, sapphire, price increases are exponential as you get to larger sizes. With your traditional gemstones, the pure color is not as important as interesting color. And it's the interesting color that you're going to be able to find that can oftentimes gives you opportunity to work with a fashion sense, okay? The colors that are coming into the marketplace, how you're going to match gemstones with them, and what's your price point going to be. Now you've got options. Say, okay, we're looking for green gemstones, we're looking for blue gemstones, we're looking for red gemstones. What are my options? And by the time I have that stackable bracelet or those drop earrings made up, what's it going to do to the price if I'm working with pink sapphire as opposed to morganite? Okay? What's the perfect color for you? This is understanding your customer. You need to be able to talk to the customer about gemstones. You need to be able to make a 15-second to 20-second just general introduction. Typically, you don't have to do that with a pearl. You don't have to do that with an opal. You don't have to do that with a garnet, because your clients are familiar with those gemstones and those names. Now, you may have to do it if you're showing your customer a bright, vivid orange garnet or a green tsavorite garnet, in which case, a little more information. This stone is named after the Savo game range in East Africa. It is a very rare gemstone, exceedingly attractive. Garnets are very, very hard materials and very transparent. You can see that with the cut on this gemstone, that transparency and that hardness makes it just pop out at you. A little bit of information, a little bit of understanding where the gemstone comes from, about its rarity, something appealing to the gemstone, why it looks as good as it does, and the customer now has a comfort level with you that they may not have with somebody else in another store. Understanding the customer's concerns about color, their favorite colors, asking them questions can help you narrow in some of the materials in your showcases that provide those colors. And it also, understanding what's going on with color in the future, helps you merchandise more effectively. And if you're going to merchandise effectively, you have to think about what are the colors that are going to be popular, and how can I provide those colors to my customer in affordable price ranges, and what kinds of looks. The one thing we we don't discuss much in this discussion of colors. It's not just the gemstone, it's the look. What kind of looks are trending in the industry? Are they droopy earrings? Are they stackable bracelets, large single stones on the rings and things? You need to be aware of what's trending, because your displays, it's going to be important that you focus on those trends in your displays. I would love to say that what you need to do is take everything out of the cases in the front of the store and put them in the back store and fill those front cases with color. I would love it if you would do that, and you would sell more colored gemstones if you did that. But one thing you do need to understand, or several things you need to understand, our research, and we do research on a regular basis, customers are asking to see more color in the store. And if they're walking by the store, you don't have too much time to attract them. You want to show them what's trending, and color is trending. So if you have a case in the front of the store, put some color into it. If you have display windows that face outside onto the street or out into the mall, put some color in there and show the kinds of jewelry designs and color that is trending right now. Not necessarily to teach people about the trends themselves, but to teach people about the fact that color is inside. I can come in and look for color. Just one thing I want to talk to you about there is, if you want to attract a customer's attention from 25 feet away, put something bright yellow in the window. Big citrine, a nice golden beryl or something like that, and you can mix other color around it. But the most recognizable and visible color is yellow. It will attract their attention. So putting color in your cases up front allows your employees during any presentation to be able to pull a piece of color out of the cases and show the client. It allows the client to walk in and just take a look in your cases, see some color, and say, all right, let me take a look around because I've been looking for color. And if you have windows outside, certainly you want to do that as well. I won't go too involved in it, but if you're not involved in social media, Instagram, Facebook, ours, colored gemstones, are a very, very visual item. And if you want to develop your Instagram account, build it, or if you are thinking about developing one, colored gemstones are an excellent vehicle to put into your Instagram accounts. We have lots of color materials in our stock photography program that we can provide for you. It is something that is very, very appealing. AGTA has one of the largest Instagram accounts in the jewelry industry, and I attribute it all to having some very good people with social media and primarily saying, we have pretty colored gemstones to show. Last thing I want to point out, lighting, because I want to save some time for questions here. Understand that where you show your gemstones is going to impact its appeal. Blue, green, cool colors will look much, much better under fluorescent lights, and they'll look much better under indirect daylight. To walk a customer over to the window and show that sapphire, or that tanzanite, or that emerald in natural light is going to make it pop a lot better than if it's in incandescent or hot lights. Rubies, spessartite garnets, citrines, they look better in incandescent light. And sometimes you cannot, you don't have each gemstone under the appropriate light that is best for it. And that's one of the reasons why you need to move your customer to an area where the light is the best for that gemstone. And it also engages you and the customer. It gets them involved in the presentation, lets them know that when they're wearing this piece in the office, it's probably going to look a little different than it is if they're out at night with firelight or incandescent light someplace. So understanding the effects of color on the gemstone and moving your customer around, showing them those attributes, can be very, very important. So we talked about knowledge. We talked about education and how to get some simple education. We talked about some ways to present that education in the sales presentation, the differences between the classic gemstones and the traditional gemstones. And we talked about a few other considerations in terms of of color. So that is my presentation as much as I can squeeze into 45 or 50 minutes, and I will turn it back over to Robin and Brian if we're going to take questions.
Doug, at this time, we don't have any questions that's come through.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. Am I still going to get paid for a full hour?
Sure. You round it off.
Okay.
I think you answered all the questions in your presentation there, Doug. That's probably what it is.
Either that or no one showed up for the webinar. That's always a possibility too.
But, no. I see a number there. We're looking good.
Good. Well, I don't know if you guys want to me to stick around, or if there's. I'm happy to wait and see if there's any more information. I could always step back here just for a moment and talk about membership in AGTA. Talking about color, let me just do this one thing. Oftentimes, you see all those palettes in, Pantone, and you see it in the fashion trends and stuff, where they match these palettes, and you're matching colors with colors. Matching it up to those palettes is very easy, but one simple rule, this is a color wheel. This is a color wheel, all right? One simple rule is opposites work well, okay? So if you have opposing colors on the color wheel, yellows and blues work real well together, okay? That's what they call complementary colors. If you have colors next to those yellows, those are what we call analogous colors. Those colors work well with that yellow color as well. So if you're kind of having trouble and you're thinking about making some jewelry up and you want to know what's going to look with what, first of all, the rules are all being broken right now. If it looks good, give it a shot. But those rules about analogous color on either side of the color and complementary colors directly across are good basics for you. Okay?
Doug, we do have one question that came through.
All right.
What are the best resources for training material on colored gemstones?
Oh, God. I would recommend two things. I'm not quite certain if it's still up and online, but I'll have to send you a website. There is a website that the Jewelers Education Foundation of the American Gem Society funded that is a resource for all training in the industry. It's like a clearinghouse for training. I would say that if you, our website is very good. Search the websites that seem to have a little more, you can tell the difference between just pure technical information and romantic information. Good pictures, good information. Try our website out. Beyond that, you start getting into websites that are educational materials that are inexpensive. You talk about Diamond Council of America has a very good colored gemstone program. GIA, AGS Way, obviously. GIA has very nice colored stone information. So all of those things, together are probably going to help you. ICA's website is very good, International Colored Stone Association, for information for gemstones. Those are free as well, so it helps.
We have another question here, Doug. Have gemstones been more popular option now as compared to a couple of years ago?
I wouldn't say a couple of years ago. I think that, gemstones for the past decade have really been on a scream. Norms change, prices change, availability changes. Color is very, very popular, and I say 10 years. It could be, you might say 15 or 20. But, the thing is, if you take a look at everything that surrounds your life, 15, 20 years ago, you couldn't find all the different options for, cell phone covers and furniture and clothing and all of the different combinations. And you certainly didn't see the colors mixed and matched and put together. So color is something that designers and manufacturers in all industries are turning to provide some kind of niche. In some cases, even with cell phones, sometimes the color of the cases is the marketing focus in itself. The fact that you have earpods, iPods, okay, the earpods, whatever they call them, AirPods, they don't come in any color. And if I've read 20 reviews about those things, every single review says, I wish they came in color. So color is very, very important. I don't think prices have dramatically changed recently, except for when you talk about the big three, rubies, emeralds, and sapphires. Obviously, rubies especially have been increasing in value. Sapphires still selling better than any other of the big three. But I think what you have seen is that two things have happened. One, you're seeing very inexpensive gem materials used in jewelry. And it's to provide a price point. It's exciting looking stuff, very heavy oftentimes in the pastels, rugged crystals, sometimes slabs and things where it's just kind of fun, attractive jewelry. And that is selling more and more and driving sales in a lot of stores. On the other end, the big three and finer quality has been selling well because people perceive it differently. And the prices of the finer quality material has been increasing dramatically. You see the results of auctions where special rubies and special sapphires are selling, and the customers are starting to become educated about it. It's not unlike people who appreciate wine. The best-selling wine in the industry is Yellowtail. Okay, it's a basic consumable wine. It's sold across the world in massive quantities. And there's the Chateau Lafite, 62 that goes for $50,000 a bottle. There's customers for both of those. It's that area all the way in between that you really have to be able to navigate with a customer, because just as when you're purchasing a fine bottle of wine in a restaurant, you kind of probably have an idea of how much money you're going to spend or want to spend. And what you really want to hear from the sommelier is, tell me about the wines in this price. Tell me about this wine. Tell me about that wine. And it's not too much different when you're working with fine jewelry and colored gemstones. People don't come in necessarily with a $100,000 open to buy when they walk in the store. They may be interested in color. They may be thinking about something they saw. The jewelry may appeal to them, and they want to be able to work within a price point. So understanding the different gemstones, the different colors, and their price points can be very, very helpful in helping you satisfy a customer like that.
That's great. Well, thanks, Doug. We appreciate you and your experience, expertise, and especially your leadership in the colored gemstone sector. This has been a wonderful presentation, and on behalf of the guilds, we thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
Yeah, wonderful. I'm a new member of AGTA, but have been involved for many years. And to those of you out there who are not members, I would strongly encourage you to become a member and to look into membership. The AGTA is an incredible resource for all things colored gemstones. So you can call Doug and talk to him about that. I also hope that all of you are members of your local AGS guild. And if you're not, let us know so we can help you find the closest one to you. And of course, if there's not a guild anywhere near you, we can always discuss the possibility of setting one up. So thanks everyone for participating, and thanks again to you, Doug Hucker, for this wonderful presentation.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.